May the Lord's mercy meet you right where you are today. Smoke. Thick, unmistakable, pouring out of both windows of a parked sedan on a residential street in Houston, Texas. Blue and red lights strobing across the dashboard, across the rearview mirror, across the face of a young woman in the driver's seat who already knew it was over. The officer did not need to ask questions. The car was a fishbowl of marijuana smoke. He opened the door, and the cloud spilled into the night air like a confession. Christina Baker put her hands on the steering wheel. She was 23 years old. She was a school counselor by day, and she was high out of her mind at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. The handcuffs were cold. The metal bit into her wrists as the officer guided her into the back of the patrol car. She sat there, behind the cage partition, staring at the back of the headrest in front of her. And for the first time in her entire life, she spoke to God. Not a prayer, a scream. A raw, jagged, furious accusation hurled at the ceiling of a police cruiser. If you are real, why are you doing this to me? I hate you. That was Christina Baker's first prayer. And I want you to hear it, because I have been a shepherd of souls long enough to know that the angriest prayers are often the most honest ones. God is not offended by fury. He is offended by indifference. And Christina Baker was many things that night, but indifferent was not one of them. Stay with me to the end. You will hear how a pregnant stranger showed up at Christina's door with a court document that saved a life. You will learn what happened when a man named Hillroy tapped her on the shoulder at work and said, "I have a word from the Lord for you." And you will witness the moment a district attorney looked at a drug case, then looked at Christina, and said 4 words that made her scream in a courtroom. But first, let me take you back. Back before the arrest, before the prayer, before any of it. Back to the beginning of a girl nobody wanted. Christina Baker grew up in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. Not the beachy California Santa Cruz that Americans picture when they hear the name. The Bolivian Santa Cruz, a sprawling, humid, chaotic city in the tropical lowlands where the heat wraps around you like a wet towel the moment you step outside. The streets smelled of diesel and roasting plantains. The stray dogs were as permanent as the traffic. And in a small house somewhere in that city, a marriage was falling apart. Christina was 7 years old when her parents divorced. Her father was an atheist, her mother a non-practicing Catholic who had long since stopped attending Mass. There was no God in that house, not on the walls, not in conversation, not in the way the family spoke to each other, or failed to. The divorce was a clean cut, the way a machete goes through sugar cane, swift and total. Her father left. Her mother stayed. And God, to the extent that anyone in that household had ever considered him, was not invited to the aftermath. What filled the vacuum was not peace, it was a stepfather. And the stepfather brought something into that house that 7-year-old Christina could feel in her bones, even if she could not name it. Contempt. Not the dramatic movie villain kind, the slow, grinding, daily kind. The kind that lives in a tone of voice, in the way someone looks at you when you walk into a room, as if you are a problem that has not yet been solved. By 14, Christina was gone. Not physically, not yet. But the girl who lived in that house had checked out. She found the bars, she found the drugs, she found the wrong crowd, the kind of people who do not ask questions about where you come from because they are running from the same thing. She started cutting herself, not because she wanted to end her life, because she wanted proof that she was still alive. Dead inside, she would later say. And I wanted signs that I was alive. The blade was the only thing that made her feel anything at all. I have sat across from people who have described this exact sensation to me. That numbness, that terrifying flatness where the world goes gray and you cannot feel your own heartbeat anymore. And I have learned that the things people do to escape that numbness, the drinking, the cutting, the drugs, are not the disease. They are the symptoms. The disease is the lie that says, you are alone and nobody is coming. By 15, Christina was partying through the night, cycling through substances the way other teenagers cycled through homework assignments. And then came the moment on the stairs. Her stepfather stood at the top of the staircase. Christina stood at the bottom. And he said the words that would echo through the next decade of her life. You are not worth it. 4 words. Then he moved toward her. Whether he intended to push her down those stairs or simply to intimidate her, Christina never knew, because she does not remember the next few seconds clearly. What she remembers is that her mother was there. Her mother saw, and her mother chose the stepfather. That is the wound, right there. Not the stepfather's cruelty, as brutal as it was. The wound was her mother's silence, her mother's choice. The person who was supposed to protect her, choosing the person who was destroying her. And if you have ever experienced that particular betrayal, the parent who does not intervene, who looks away, who sides with the one causing harm, then you know that it does not just break your heart. It breaks your ability to believe that anyone, anywhere, will ever choose you. And so Christina was sent away, a one-way ticket. Santa Cruz, Bolivia, to Maui, Hawaii. 19 hours of travel, 2 layovers, an ocean and a hemisphere between her and the only life she had ever known. She had not seen her biological father in 10 years. She was going to live with him. A man who was, G.K. her, essentially a stranger. She arrived at the Maui airport with a duffel bag and an electric guitar. Black eyeliner smeared halfway down her cheeks. Metal spikes on her wrists. Black clothes head to toe. She sat in the terminal for 6 hours, waiting. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that flat, institutional hum that makes everything look slightly unreal. Tourists in Hawaiian shirts streamed past her, with rolling suitcases and sunburns, and she sat there on a plastic chair with her guitar case between her knees, a Bolivian goth teenager, G.K. Data, and nobody came. When her father finally arrived, the news was not what she expected. He had lost everything. His job, his apartment, his savings. Cocaine had eaten through his life like termites through wood. He was homeless, living in a tent on the beach. Let that sink in. A 15-year-old girl flies halfway around the world to live with the father she has not seen in a decade, and discovers that her father lives in a tent on a beach in Maui. This is not the postcard version of Maui, the honeymoon resorts and the whale-watching tours. This is the other Maui, the one where homeless encampments line the shore behind the tree line, where the sand smells of wood smoke and unwashed clothes, where the waves sound beautiful until you realize you are hearing them because you have no walls. Christina became homeless. A teenager on Maui Beach, sleeping in a tent beside her drug-addicted father, with nothing but a duffel bag and a guitar, and the slowly hardening conviction that the universe was exactly as empty and cruel as she had suspected. But God was already moving, even here, even in the tent, even on the beach. Something was being set in motion that Christina could not yet see. Family members on the mainland found out. Aunts, uncles, distant relatives, the kind of people who appear in a crisis and disappear just as quickly. They brought her to Houston, Texas, and there began the season of being passed. House to house, spare bedroom to spare bedroom, couch to couch. Nobody wanted to keep her. A drug-addicted goth teenager with black eyeliner and an attitude like a loaded weapon is not what most families are looking for in a house guest. She stayed a week here, 2 weeks there, wearing out her welcome the way water wears out a paper cup, slowly and then all at once. Eventually, she was shipped to Pennsylvania, a Red Roof Inn motel. If you have ever seen a Red Roof Inn, you know the aesthetic. The stained carpet, the bedspread that has survived 1,000 strangers, the ice machine humming in the hallway at 2 in the morning, the parking lot with its cracked asphalt and its yellow lines fading to ghosts. Christina lived there, not for a night, not for a weekend, for weeks. A teenager in a motel room, with no family, no plan, and no reason to believe that tomorrow would be different from today. And here is where the story turns, because this is where God begins to show his hand, not with thunder, not with a miracle, with a sentence spoken at a church staff meeting. Christina's brother played college football. His coach happened to attend a church, and at a staff meeting at that church, the coach mentioned, almost in passing, that there was a situation. An atheist, drug-addicted teenager, living in a motel, no family to take her. He did not even ask for help directly. He just mentioned it. A couple named the Hatches stood up. Jim and his wife. I do not know what they looked like. I do not know how old they were. I do not know what they did for a living. But I know what they said, because those words changed everything. We will take her in. 4 words. Just like the stepfather's 4 words. But these 4 words were the opposite. The stepfather said, "You are not worth it." The Hatches said, "We will take her in." And right there, in the gap between those 2 sentences, is the entire gospel. Because the gospel is not a theological argument. It is a family that opens its door to someone the world has thrown away. Christina showed up at the Hatches house 1 week before September 11th, 2001. The whole country was about to change. Towers were about to fall. Wars were about to start. And a goth teenager with a duffel bag and a guitar was standing on a doorstep in Pennsylvania, looking at a woman she had never met, thinking, this will not last either. Mrs. Hatch laid down 2 rules. Be home by 11, go to church every Sunday. Christina stared at her. I am an atheist. Mrs. Hatch smiled. That is okay, Chris. Welcome home. But you are going to church. I have seen this kind of faith before. The faith that does not argue, does not preach, does not try to win the debate. The faith that simply says, come, sit beside me, and trusts that God will do the rest. Mrs. Hatch had that faith. It was immovable, not aggressive, not pushy, not performative, just immovable. Every Sunday, Christina tried to sabotage it. She wore fuzzy slippers to the service. GK wore black hoodies with obscene words scrawled across the back. She sat with her arms crossed and her face set like concrete. She radiated hostility the way a radiator radiates heat, steady and unmissable. And every Sunday, Mrs. Hatch looked at her, looked at the slippers, looked at the hoodie, and said, Great, Chris. Let us go. No lectures, no conditions, no You can't wear that in God's house. Just let us go." Week after week, Christina sat in that church pew and heard the pastor preach about the love of God. And week after week, the words hit something inside her that she did not want hit. She was not curious about God. She was furious at him. "If you exist," she whispered under her breath, "you did this to me. You let my mother choose him over me. You let my father become a drug addict. You let me sleep in a tent. If you are real, you are the cruelest thing in the universe." That is resistance. Real resistance. Not the polite kind where someone says, "I am just not sure about religion." The deep kind, where the wound is so raw that even the suggestion of a loving God feels like an insult. Because if God is loving, then where was he? If God is a father, then why did both of hers abandon her? Christina graduated from high school while living with the Hatches. And then she left. Back into the world. Back into the drugs. She started dating a drug dealer. The spiral tightened, fast and vicious. She was using again, partying again, destroying herself again. But now with the added desperation of someone who has tasted stability and walked away from it. The Hatches house was a memory. The church pew was a memory. And the fury at God had settled into something worse than fury. Indifference. But God was not finished with Christina Baker. She got pregnant. She was 20 years old, alone, addicted, carrying a child she had not planned and did not know how to raise. She scheduled an abortion. The appointment was set. The clinic was chosen. The doctor was chosen. It was done in her mind. She would go, it would be over, and she would continue the slow, certain business of destroying herself. And then came the knock on the door. A woman stood on Christina's doorstep. She was huge with pregnancy, belly out to here, with 2 small children clinging to her legs. She was the girlfriend of a drug dealer, someone from the fringes of Christina's world. Christina let her in. The woman walked past her, went straight to the bathroom, and pulled something out of her bag. A manila folder. She set it on the bathroom counter under the flickering fluorescent light and opened it. State of Texas versus... and the name of a doctor. Christina looked at the file. A 15-year-old girl had gone to that clinic. The same clinic Christina had chosen. The same doctor Christina had scheduled her appointment with. The girl did not come home. She passed away on the operating table. The bathroom was small. The fluorescent tube buzzed overhead. The pregnant woman's belly pressed against the counter. Christina could hear the 2 children in the other room, restless, knocking something over. And this woman, this stranger, this drug dealer's girlfriend, reached out and grabbed the front of Christina's shirt with both hands and pulled her close. "I know you do not believe in God," she said, her voice shaking. "But my God will provide for this baby. I am asking you, do not end this child's life." Christina collapsed. Right there, on the bathroom floor, on the cracked tile, with the fluorescent light humming above her and the file still open on the counter. She did not get up for a long time. She kept the baby, a boy. She named him Evan. She did not know until years later that the name means God has given grace. But God knew. God knew the name before she chose it. And that is how he works sometimes. Not with thunder, with a name whispered into a mother's ear. A name whose meaning she will not discover until she is ready to receive it. But I need to be honest with you, because this story is not one of those clean, simple testimonies where the crisis happens and then everything gets better. Christina kept the baby, but she did not stop using drugs. She went back to school. She became a counselor, working with young people during the day, advising them on healthy choices, building lesson plans about self-esteem and decision-making. And then, at night, she used the double life, the mask, the performance of normalcy that addicts know better than anyone. Smiling at a faculty meeting at 8 in the morning with pupils that were still dilated from the night before. And this is where we return to that night in the car. The smoke pouring from the GDK windows, the blue and red lights, the hand gay-cuffs, the back of the patrol car. And the first prayer screamed at a ceiling. If you are real, why are you doing this to me? I hate you. She was released on bond. She went back to work. And there, sitting in front of her computer at the school, staring at the screen, she went to the darkest place a person can go. She did not want to live anymore. The arrest, the drugs, the double life, the baby at home who deserved a mother who was not falling apart, the court date hanging over her head like a guillotine. She sat in that chair and calculated the ways to stop existing. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, same as they always did. The coffee in her mug had gone cold. She could hear students laughing in the hallway, and the sound was like hearing laughter from the other side of a thick glass wall. Close, but utterly unreachable. I have walked alongside people in that darkness. I have sat with them. And I have learned that when a person reaches that place, the place where the will to live has been extinguished, it is not because they want to go. It is because they cannot see a single reason to stay. The darkness does not invite you. It simply removes every exit sign until the only door you can see is the worst one. And that is exactly where God sent Hillroy. A man walked up behind Christina at her desk and tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around. He was a colleague, someone she knew from the building, but not well. His name was Hillroy. He looked at her, looked into her the way some people can, and said, "I have a word from the Lord for you." Christina stared at him. She was an atheist. She was sitting in a public school. A man had just told her he had a word from God. Everything in her wanted to laugh, to dismiss it, to turn back to her screen. But something held her in that chair, something in his eyes. He was not joking. He was not performing. He was terrified, the way a person is terrified when they have been given a message they did not ask for. Hillroy invited her to a prayer meeting that evening. She went. She does not know why she went. She has never been able to explain it. She just went. She walked into a room full of people she had never met, and what she saw should have sent her running. People were pacing the floor. Some of them were praying in tongues, sounds she had never heard, syllables that did not belong to any language she recognized. The air in the room felt heavy, charged, the way the air feels before a summer thunderstorm in Houston when the barometric pressure drops and your ears pop. Someone was weeping. Someone was singing. The carpet was worn thin from years of pacing feet. They surrounded her. They laid hands on her shoulders, on her head, on her arms. Hillroy stood in front of her, and he said words that cut through every wall she had built over 23 years. This is a matter of life or death. He did not know about the patrol car. He did not know about the drugs. He did not know about the dark place at her desk, the cold coffee, the calculations. He did not know any of it. And yet he said, "This is a matter of life or death." Because God knew. God had always known. And then something happened that Christina Baker did not expect and could not have prepared for. Her eyes were closed, hands pressed on her shoulders. The sound of prayer surrounded her like a current. And she saw something. An open vision, clear as daylight. She saw herself in a car. She saw the car swerving. She saw the crash. She saw her own body still. She saw what would happen if she continued down the road she was on. Not metaphorically, literally. The vision was specific, detailed, vivid. The kind of seeing that does not come from the imagination because the imagination is not that cruel or that precise. When the vision ended, someone asked her, "Would you like to receive Jesus?" And Christina Baker, the atheist, the addict, the goth teenager who wore fuzzy slippers to church just to make a point, the woman who had screamed, "I hate you," at the ceiling of a police car, opened her mouth and said, "Whoever you are, Jesus, come into my life." I want you to understand what happened next, because this is the moment that everything turned. Christina felt something pour over her, beginning at the crown of her head and flowing down her body like warm oil. From her scalp to her forehead, to her neck, to her shoulders, to her chest, to her fingertips, to her knees, to her toes. Warm, heavy, liquid. She began to shake. Not from fear, not from cold, from something being removed. She could feel it going. The weight, the boulders. 23 years of abandonment and fury and numbness and self-destruction, lifting off her like stones being pulled from a grave. The room looked different. The colors were more vivid, the way the world looks after a long rain when the dust has been washed from every surface. The fluorescent lights, the same kind that had hummed over every terrible moment of her life, the motel room, the bathroom with the file, the school desk where she had wanted to stop living. Those lights looked brighter, warmer, as if the same lights that had witnessed her worst moments were now witnessing her rebirth. She was born again. Those are the words she uses, and I do not use them lightly, because I know they have become a cliché in some circles, a bumper sticker, a t-shirt slogan. But when Christina Baker says she was born again, she means it the way Nicodemus must have meant it when he asked Jesus, "How can a man be born when he is old?" She means, the person who walked into that room did not walk out. Someone new walked out. Someone who could feel things. Someone whose eyes worked differently, whose lungs drew air differently, whose heart, for the first time in memory, was not clenched like a fist. Within 3 months, she was clean. No drugs, no alcohol, no substances of any kind. Not through a program, not through willpower, not through a 12-step plan, through whatever had poured over her in that room. The cravings did not taper off. They left. The way a fever breaks, not gradually but all at once. And you wake up, and the sheets are soaked, and you are yourself again. But there was still the matter of the law, the arrest, the charge, the court date. Christina walked into the courthouse on the appointed day. Her attorney had a strategy. The plan was to negotiate, to plea, to minimize the damage. Standard procedure. But Christina had been walking with the Lord for 3 months, and she heard something. Not an audible voice, a knowing, deep, unmistakable, the kind of knowing that sits in your chest and will not move. And the knowing said, "Talk to the district attorney." Her attorney told her it was a terrible idea. You do not approach the DA directly. You do not deviate from the legal strategy. You do not say anything that could be used against you. Christina nodded. She understood. She walked across the courtroom hallway and approached the district attorney anyway. "I am not the person who was in that car," she said. "God has changed my life." The district attorney looked at her, a long look, the kind of look that weighs a person, that measures them, that searches for the lie beneath the performance. And then the DA said, "We all make mistakes. Have a great day." Christina turned around. Her attorney was walking toward her, holding a yellow piece of paper. He was moving slowly, the way people move when they cannot quite believe what they are holding. He held up the paper so she could see the words typed across the top. "Order of dismissal." Christina Baker walked out of that courtroom screaming, not crying, screaming, glorifying God at the top of her lungs in a government building, with the security guards staring and the other defendants on the benches looking up from their phones. She did not care. She was free, not just from the charges, from everything. From the tent on Maui Beach, from the motel in Pennsylvania, from the stepfather on the stairs, from the mother who chose wrong, from the needle and the pipe and the blade and the numbness, from 23 years of believing that she was not worth it. And in that moment, she heard God speak, not audibly, but with the same unmistakable clarity that had told her to approach the DA. "I am above the judicial system, Christina, and I have been watching over you your whole life. Your whole life. Every moment. The divorce, the stepfather, the stairs, the tent, the motel, the Hatch's doorstep, the church pew with the fuzzy slippers, the bathroom with the file, the back seat of the patrol car. Every single moment watched. Every single moment held. Not prevented, because God does not always prevent, but held. The way a river holds a stone, carrying it, smoothing it, shaping it into something new, without the stone even knowing it is being transformed. Christina raised her son, Evan, whose name means God has given grace. She left the drugs behind. She left the darkness behind. She stepped into a life she could not have imagined on that plastic chair in the Maui airport, or on the cracked tile of that bathroom floor, or in the back of that patrol car. A life where colors are vivid, where fluorescent lights are warm, where the word home means something it never meant before. And maybe that is the real miracle of this story. Not the dismissed charges, not the deliverance from addiction, as extraordinary as that was. The real miracle is this: that God was there the entire time. In the tent, in the motel, in the church pew where an atheist girl sat in fuzzy slippers and did not believe a word she was hearing. He was there. He was waiting. Not because he was powerless to act sooner, but because he was building something. Placing person after person in her path, the Hatches, the pregnant stranger, Hillroy, each one a thread in a tapestry she could not yet see. And maybe you are sitting where Christina was sitting. Maybe not literally in the back of a police car, but somewhere in that same territory. The territory where the lie says, you are not worth it. The territory where the darkness has removed every exit sign, and the only door you can see is the worst one. Maybe you have screamed at God. Maybe you have told him you hate him. Maybe you have never prayed at all. I have been a pastor for a long time, and if there is one thing Christina Baker's story teaches me, it is this: God is not waiting for you to clean yourself up. He is not waiting for you to be ready. He is not waiting for you to believe. He sent the Hatches before Christina believed. He sent the stranger with the file before Christina was willing to listen. He sent Hillroy before Christina even knew she needed saving. God moves first, always. He walks into the room before you have finished locking the door. That girl in the fuzzy slippers, the one who wore profanity to church and sat with her arms crossed and her jaw set like stone. She was already being saved. She just did not know it yet. Somewhere tonight, someone is sitting in a car, or a motel room, or a bathroom with a flickering light, and the lie is whispering, "You are not worth it." But the truth is different. The truth is a couple standing up at a church meeting and saying, "We will take her in." The truth is a pregnant stranger grabbing your shirt and saying, "My God will provide." The truth is a yellow piece of paper with 2 words on it: Order of Dismissal. The truth is a name chosen without understanding, Evan, and its meaning waiting patiently to be discovered. God has given grace. He has given grace to Christina Baker, and He offers the same grace to you, not because you deserve it, not because you are ready, but because that is who He is, the God who moves first. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel, and may the Lord Himself wrap you in His peace tonight, you and everyone you love. Until next time, grace and peace be with you.